Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Khmer Prince YouTube tutorial, or you can call me Rambo for short. Today we will be doing a Linux tutorial and using Linux to perform some pen testing and network exploitation. I noticed that on YouTube there's not too many tutorials based on specific penetration testing, so I'm going to use this lab. It's pretty much the local area network exploitation capstone. Alright, let's go ahead and start. So the objective of this penetration testing and network exploitation is pretty much it provide in-depth exposure and hands-on practice with all facets of 802.3 hacking, vulnerability research, pivoting, exploitation, password and hash cracking, post-exploitation activities, and methods of setting up persistence on a victim's network. This is not for like any rookie or beginner of penetration testing, but that's pretty biased. Anybody can actually learn how to be a penetration tester. You do have to know a little bit about Linux. Basic is fine. Pretty much just understanding the database of Linux, how to call commands, execute a command, perform text editor command, or even just writing your own bash scripts using Linux. I think that's pretty much not too complicating. You can look it up. At the end of the day, Google is your best friend. Remember that, because someone or some professional information technology specialist will tell you that, or even just a security instructor would pretty much tell you that Google is your best friend. When in doubt, go to Google, because everyone does. Alright, so in the scenario that we're going to be working with, there's going to be about 9 steps that we're going to go through. So the first one is we're going to create a custom password list. The second one will be scan local area network segments. The third one will be scanning targets behind firewalls. The fourth one, we're going to be exploiting various flavors of Windows and Linux. The fifth one is my favorite. We're going to be pivoting. The sixth one is harvest non-public information from compromised hosts. The seventh one, we're going to use the Linux command line during exploitation, and the eighth one, we're going to use the Windows command line during exploitation, and then the last but not least, use PowerShell to pillage compromised hosts. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start digging. So in this section, we're gonna pretty much like scan network and identify hosts on the network and services running on the hosts. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna log on. Obviously, I'm already logged on to Kali LAN VM, and obviously by default, all Kali LAN virtual machine uses a username of root and with the password of Tor, which is reverse spelling of root. Very vulnerable credentials. Very simple. Anyone can guess this. You don't even have to do any brute forcing for password or anything just to get this. So once we log on to the form, logged in from the command line terminal, we're going to start up the database services that Metasploit uses. and then we're gonna initialize the framework database before moving on. So to do so, let me just back out. Okay, and we are going to start the services Metasploit. So first thing we want to do is make sure we always start the SQL host query SQL requests, and we want to start that all the time. Every time you start any database recalling, you always want to start with the service PostgreSQL start. And then the second one, we're gonna start the work frame of MSF DB, and we're gonna initialize it by typing that. And it appears to be already configured, so obviously we don't need to initialize it. So let's just go ahead and start Metasploit MSF console, and that should fire up the work frame for Metasploit. And here we go. Alright, so we're here at we're inside Metasploit. So the first step we did was we logged into Kali, LAN, VM using root and Tor as the credentials. Now, and then we also started the service, obviously. So from the open terminal, we also started a Metasploit. Now let's go ahead and initialize a new workspace. So to create a workspace, actually let's go into the manual of workspace or help. Usually I would always use the service or database and -h for help, and then it should list some examples of how to call the command. And as you can see here, you got list workspace, switch workspace, add workspaces, delete workspaces, delete all workspaces, and rename, and so on. What we want to do is we want to create a new workspace. So to do so, all you have to do is just use workspace -a, as you can see right here. Let me highlight it for you. Okay, that pretty much add workspaces. Alright, so make sure you use the right syntax, the right flags. So workspace -a, and the name we want to name this is internal. Okay, and then there you go, it says added workspace internal. And to check to see if that actually exists, we're going to type in workspace and enter. As you can see, it shows now default internal. Okay, and if you want to delete the workspace, just to show you how it works, so let's go ahead and type in -d and internal, which was the name. I always use a very convenient key, which is the tab completion key. Very convenient because it makes things much faster, and sometimes it's also it helps to verify if certain files do exist or not. Alright, let's go ahead and delete internal. Okay, switch workspace back to default to double check that to see if it did deleted that workspace that we created internal. All you do is just type in workspace, enter, and it only shows you as default. That means that there's no workspace that was created. So let's go ahead and clear the space. Now let's do -a to create a new workspace internal. Okay, and now we want to switch to that workspace that we just recently created. So in order to switch workspace, all you have to do is just type in workspace and the name of that workspace that we created, which is internal. And now you want to verify it, just type in workspace and it should show that you are now inside the internal workspace. Okay, so to briefly explain the workspace, is when you do any type of penetration testing or any network exploitation. By default, if you use the DB in, say, network mapping, like end mapping, for example, if you do db-h, that doesn't have nothing happens because you can't get any manual off of DB inside of Metasploit. But uh, to pretty much input data into your workspace, you have to always include DB underscore in front of the network map that you're gonna do. So in this example, I'm gonna show you a short scan. Well, first of all, you want to know what you're scanning. So if you're gonna, let's see, if we scan, let's do example. All right, so we're gonna go and do example.com. So let's do network. The syntax for network, like end mapping, let's just show you what nmap does. So as you can see, this is the example of end mapping. These are examples of what you can do a network mapping. Pretty much it is a port scanning device. You can use this to scan ports. You can use this to scan URLs to see if which port is open in that URL or that IP address. So let's go ahead and check this out. Here's some example. Let me highlight it for you. Right there is a perfect example. You have nmap-v, which stands for verbose, and dash capital A is kind of like aggressive scan. Well, it is actually aggressive scan. And the URL, which is scanme.nmap.org. And if you do nmap-v -sn, it pretty much is a scanning the name of that version. Okay. You can also use the output flags. Pretty much output scan in normal XML. It pretty much generates like the scan that you've done, and it pretty much directs it to a text file or XML file that you can view later, or you can cat later. And also you could do like a firewall ID invasion and spoofing. There's so many, right? You can even do the operating system detection. So in this case, I don't want to continue to take a long time explaining these flags. So let's just use, because what we're actually doing is we're just pretty much this first segment here, we're gonna do a LAN segment, right? So let's go ahead and just alright, we already created. Let's quit out of here and let's clear the screen. Now, since we already created workspace internal, alright, so we already switched to internal, so we just do workspace to verify, and now we are internal. Okay, so let's go ahead and open another command line and identify the IP address of the Kali machine that we're working on. So I already have one open right here, as you can see. So I'm going to do if config -et0, and it should just give me, or maybe not, if config et0. and it did. So all I wanted to just grab out was just which is the first network interface card, um, and you can see this is our IP address. Okay, this is our network mask broadcast. Okay, so we want to copy that IP address, which is the Cali IP address, and we're gonna go ahead and return the Metasploit here, and we're going to perform a simple scan using Nmap on the subnet that it belongs to. So that means instead of the full IP address of the Cali IP address, we're going to Nmap, do a simple scan, and we're going to paste, just scan the subnet mask of that IP address. Okay, and that will start to run. As you can see, here is some interesting information. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're not going to count this one since I know that is our IP address, so we know that these are different IP address. As you can see, there's about 3 virtual machine, okay, that the hosts are up. So that means those computer or virtual machine are open, and this is Microsoft. We know that we have some interesting lead that this is a Microsoft computer or running with Microsoft. So this information right here, we can pretty much direct it to a text file if we want to cat it later on. But for this purpose of this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and just move on. And what we're going to do is pretty much just focus on the identity of the live IP addresses on the subnet mask that have automatic data automatically added to the Workspace database. So now, once the Nmap scan has completed, we're going to use the appropriate command in Metasploit to display the hosts you discovered during the scan along with their associated IP addresses. Next, let's copy all the list host IP addresses and then add them to a file named lan.txt and then save that new file. So in order for you to display a host, pretty much all we need to do is just type in host, and it should show you why didn't it show? Weird. Those are all live hosts. Okay, something went wrong here. Let me go ahead and re reconnect this thing. Okay, that was weird. What? What the hell? Somebody done screwed this thing up. Alright, let's stop.